Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to talk about additive and multiplicative inverses really briefly. The additive inverse, when you think about the inverse, you think about the opposite. Okay. And also another thing to keep in mind is that when we find the additive inverse, it must add up to 0. Okay. So, for example, if you have a quantity A, and you want to find the additive inverse, well, when you add the inverse, okay, the opposite of positive A is going to be negative A, and that's going to yield a 0 amount, okay, because a positive and a negative, if you simplify the signs, okay, that will give you the 0, so it would work, all right? So you have to think of the opposite. So an example of this is, okay, what is the additive inverse of -5? Okay, so again, we're starting off with -5 and we're adding the additive inverse. So when we do that, then that's going to be a +5. Okay, +5. And that's going to sum up to 0. Because -5 plus 5 will cancel each other out. And therefore you're going to get a net of 0. Okay? Same thing here. What is the... Okay, what is the additive inverse of, let me write a little better than that, of 9. Okay, so again, we start off with what we have, 9, and then we're going to add the additive inverse. Well, the additive inverse of 9, the inverse of 9 is -9, and that should sum up to 0. So if we simplify the signs, a positive and a negative is a negative, 9 minus 9 is in fact 0, so therefore we get the sum of 0, and that's the additive inverse. So it's a pretty easy thing to do. Not much to it at all. Okay. The other one is called the multiplicative inverse. Multiplicative inverse. Okay, and that's going to be calculated as if you have a quantity, then we multiply it by the reciprocal, and that's going to yield 1. Okay, because the A's will cancel. All right, so this is known as the reciprocal. Okay. Okay, so an example of a reciprocal, just so we recall, let's say you had x, right? And you want to find the reciprocal of x. Well, that will just be 1 over x. Okay? So you got to remember that the x has an invisible 1 over it, so under it. So when you do the reciprocal, it will flip. Okay? So another example of that is, what is the reciprocal of 7 over 9? Well, when you do the reciprocal, the bottom becomes the top, top becomes the bottom, so now that is 9 over 7. Okay? So that is going to be the reciprocal. Okay? That's the reciprocal, and this is the reciprocal. So we got to make sure we understand that concept really well when they mean multiply by the reciprocal. Okay? Because when we do an example on the next slide, whoops, there was more than enough slides here. This is the... Okay. So when you do the reciprocal of the multiplicative inverse of -3, Okay, what is the multiplicative inverse of negative 3? So we're going to start with negative 3, and then we're going to multiply it by the reciprocal. Okay, so what is the reciprocal of negative 3? Well, if you do it over here, negative 3 is really written over 1. So when you do the reciprocal, it's going to be 1 over minus 3. Okay? Sorry, there should be an equal sign. Well, not an equal sign, but let me go ahead and rewrite that. I'm so sorry. Okay, so if you have negative 3 and you want to do the reciprocal, then remember this is really written as negative 3 over 1, so the reciprocal is 1 over negative 3. Okay? So we're going to multiply that by 1 over negative 3, and then the negative 3's will cancel, and then you're just going to be left with 1. It's going to work every single time. Okay? So let's do another one. What is the multiplicative inverse of 3 over 7? Okay, so we're going to take 3 over 7 and we're going to multiply it by the inverse. The inverse of 3 over 7, or the reciprocal of 3 over 7, is 7 over 3. Mathematically, the 3's will cancel and the 7's will cancel, and that's going to reduce to 1, because 3 divided by 3 is 1, and so is 7 divided by 7 is 1, and 1 over 1 is 1. Okay? Again, you could do it. Let's do one more example. What is the multiplicative inverse of 2x over 3? So we're going to take 2x over 3, and we're going to multiply it by the reciprocal. Again, the reciprocal of 2x over 3 should be 3 over 2x. And then, of course, the 2x's cancel, and so does the 3's, and you should be left with 1. So it's a property that you're always going to get 1. All right? And so it's a pretty simple thing to do, okay, to find the multiplicative inverse. All right, I hope that you found this video to be very helpful, and looking forward to doing the next video with you. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.